Hey guys, Vantress here. I'm still working on the Bloodhound Knight video, but I wanted to get this out while patch 1.09 is still relevant. I realize that 50 other YouTubers have probably talked about it by now, but I wanted to give my own thoughts. I'm going to generally go over the things that are relevant, and then try to skip anything that's less interesting. To start off, ray tracing's in the game. It makes the game look slightly better, but it's very unoptimized. You'd think that after a whole year, considering they promised this before launch, that they would have optimized it. But I mean, it's from software. Guess they just I don't know. But yeah, so if you're on console, do not use ray tracing until they maybe fix it eventually. We'll likely get at least a hotfix or two, and I'll talk more about potential future patches later. But we'll get to that. As for relevant PvP adjustment, these two, they're fine. You can maybe pull them off in invasions. This is actually a mistranslation. They meant dual wielded. This is also technically a mistranslation. They reduced the stun, so you can't vortex with these weapons anymore. If you don't know what vortex is, I would highly recommend looking at either Stilvosky or G9 or really any of the major PvP YouTubers. They could explain it way better than me. To my understanding, this spell was actually never nerfed, and they might have meant Stars of Ruin or something. But this spell is completely untouched. It's not nerfed in the slightest. Nothing about it in the files was changed, so that's bizarre. And then all of this is meant to try and reduce the ability to one-shot somebody in PvP. All of this is just damage nerfs in an attempt to try and stifle damage stacking. I do want to comment on this. So, somehow, they did nerf the jellyfish shield, but you can now stack it infinitely. And I won't explain how to do it, because I imagine that if you really want to know, you'll figure it out, and it'll be a nightmare until it gets hotfixed out. But the fact that this stuff, like, with every patch, they managed to break something, is a bit baffling to me. But whatever. It's FromSoft. Alright, now general adjustment, balance adjustment patches. The thing with all of this, it's mainly buffs to off meta. The winners here being Great Hammers and the curved greatswords. These two are now actually really good. May even potentially be meta, specifically curved greatswords, but we'll have to wait and see. Great axes are okay. They're alright. They're not going to be meta anytime soon. There's still some changes they could use. And while they are speeding up all of these attacks, especially with curved greatsword, they can look a little goofy now because of how fast they've been set up. I'm curious if they may actually do any moveset changes in the future. I guess we'll wait and see. Another big change, flail is no longer a meme weapon. You heard me right. Flails are no longer a meme weapon. By no means are they meta, not even close, but they're no longer completely gutter tier, trash fire, just complete and utter waste of code. So that's great. That's good to hear. Maybe one day they'll actually rework these weapons, maybe alter their designs a bit to make them larger, so that we may all actually want to use them genuinely. Some buffs to pretty much all of the lightish weapons. A curved sword is probably the only one that may sneak up in the meta. I'm curious to see what happens there. In short, every other curved sword is about on par with the Shashmir now. I forget what it's called. The curved sword that looks super ugly, but it has a unique moveset. All the other curved swords are up to par with that thing. So that's good. Whips are also no longer really meme tier anymore. In particular, you can actually use these and not get completely laughed at, so that's nice. They effectively fixed a bug with the Great Club. It now has faith scaling, which is important because initially it had a faith Ash of War, but it had no scaling because it had no innate faith scaling. But it did do holy damage, so I'm glad to see that the big bonks is finally getting the love that it's due. I'm assuming this right here is targeting dual coded power stance swords, but I'm not sure. You can ignore this. Still useless. As of right now with this change, so if you're not familiar, long story short, with light rolls, they overtuned them just slightly so you could spam them indefinitely and couldn't really punish. I have yet to see if this has actually fixed that problem. I'm sure in time that if it hadn't, we'll likely see maybe another nerf to light rolls. Because it's a bit of a hard balance. You want light rolls to obviously be better than mid rolls, but you also don't want them to be so annoying that you can't punish them either. This is a good change. Likely, instead of just nerfing the damage and the stun from power stanced poke weapons. They have instead decided they wanted to reduce the hitboxes. Apparently, this is most noticeable on the heavy thrusting sword. So there's that. But I'm curious to see if this actually changes the meta in any way going forward when it comes to the sheer dominance of power stance, great spears, halberds, so on. As for Ash of War adjustments, most of these are minor. This one's noticeable if you use this weapon. Very fun weapon in PvP, especially in invasions. Noticeably faster. These two targets, the two flame shields, you can now actually block something when you use it. And the flame spit no longer fires like a mortar. So that's interesting. This is the only problematic change. If you're not familiar, there is a spear. Oh, I forget the name off the top of my head, but it's like the death ritual spear. But what it does is you thrust it into the air with both hands and like 20 spears come down. They buffed this again. It was already buffed previously, and now there's a risk this might have actually been overtuned. So that's more of a wait and see. And finally, a Starcaller Cry. The problem with this weapon art was you'd use the startup, but it was very hard to land the follow-up. This is maybe will make it to where you can land the follow-up half of the time now instead of like a quarter. And if you care, the discount pizza cutter is slightly better. I still doubt it will be meta, but maybe it'll be more usable than it was. You know, quality is still booty. I'm still waiting for the day that quality will finally get a buff to not just be useful at level 200, but who knows? Maybe that is intentional. Finally, they have fixed the IGN bug. This is completely gone. Unfortunately, the Black Flame Blade buff to certain Ashes of War was also fixed in the process, which made Black Flame Blade relevant outside of its 7-second lasting time. It's only really viable for one attack, but the fact that you could combo it with weapon arts actually made it somewhat usable, so that's gone. But the good news is you can no longer use Fire's Deadly Sin to infinitely stack bleed damage, so that's always nice. Supposedly, they have done adjustments to the online multiplayer and arena matchmaking. I have yet to see how true this is. Knowing From Software, these probably never actually happened, and they might as well just be lying to us. But yeah, that's it. Overall, it's a good patch. Very, very underwhelming considering this took months. And if that's all you wanted to hear, you can click off. But I do want to go on a brief tangent, which is that FromSoft, I was recently watching a video by Amir. He's one of the big prominent PvPers. And he mentioned that the PvP community wasn't doing enough. And I couldn't really disagree more. The community has been doing more for this game than any of the other games. I've never seen the Invasion community and just all the PvPers get together in such a unified manner before to try and improve this game. But the amount of returns that they're getting for all the effort they are actually putting in to send as much feedback to From Software as possible, coherent feedback as possible, is very lackluster. And there are times where some of these patches, and just the way that the fact we're still on peer-to-peer in 2023 now, in the game released in 2022, we still don't have any dedicated servers. Their netcode is still terrible. They constantly they will make a game, they will spend most of the patch cycle fixing the bugs for that game, and then in their next game all the bugs just get ported right back over, and then they rinse and repeat. They've done this for Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, and now Elden Ring. We're doing this again. It's very frustrating. I love Elden Ring. I really like From Software, but they're not exactly the most competent and when it comes to maintaining their online features in their games. We've seen how obtuse it is just to even engage with them in Elden Ring. And eventually it gets to a point where, when do we finally stop giving them a pass about this? When do we finally say, we want accessibility, not accessible as in easy, as in I should only need to click a button to invade or to duel, instead of having to use an item, go for 2 different menus, and then get to summon somebody or get to invade. And even then, if you want solo invasions, the Furled Tongue doesn't even have a timer, so you're just going to get invaded endlessly. It's a massive pain in the rear. Yeah, it's frustrating. I want to see the game be lasting for years to come, especially after it gets its expansion. I want to see the PvP in the best state it can be, but in future titles, I really hope From Software will finally learn their lesson and finally genuinely put effort into their online components so we don't keep having these same issues all the time. Sorry about that tangent. It's just I wanted to get that off my chest. Anyway, I'm gonna keep working on videos. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I know it's not scripted, even that edited for the matter, but I wanted to get something out. And hope you guys have a great night. Hey, future Vantress here. I realize as I'm editing the video, I actually forgot to talk about the future patches. Anyway, just very briefly, I think 1.09 is it. I do not think we will get any more patches till the DLC. As for my actual DLC release predictions, my guess is Q2, if it does not come out in Q2. If you don't know what that is, that's the summer. If it does not come out in the summer, it is not coming out.